Welcome, world, to another wonderful episode of Manage Your Damn Money. It is Tuesday, our new time for our live show, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. I am Ben Carter, and this is my co-host here, Mr. Malcolm Etheridge. Malcolm, what is going on, man?
A lot, man.
A lot in the world is popping off right about now.
The world is on fire these days.
In a lot of different ways. First of all, of course, we would be remiss not to mention, obviously, our hearts going out to the folks affected in Houston in particular by Hurricane Harvey. There's a lot of devastation. Was watching a video myself on the news of water levels that were up, almost reaching second levels of homes.
Yeah, like 50 inches of total accumulation. Or
Absolutely.
Something like that.
Barely seeing stop signs rising out of the water. So people can do whatever you can to contribute. If you can't, contribute in a major way, send $5 to some kind of fund or organization that does something. There's going to be a whole huge cleanup, and then also somewhat of a housing crisis as well as a result. But in lighter news, 45 went and visited the space, apparently.
I don't know if that counts as lighter news, but
he
was there.
The light news is that Melania, the first lady, she showed up in stilettos, apparently.
Stiletto pumps in the flood.
Dun, dun.
Yeah, she well, you know what? Stiletto pumps are like Nikes for her, though. I've noticed.
I will
no matter where you see her or what she's doing, that is part of her uniform. So, maybe it's just that we aren't used to where she comes from.
That could be
wherever
it.
that is. I don't know where she comes
That could be it. But of course, we want to remind folks you're listening and watching Manage Your Damn Money. And in this episode, the conversation at hand is keeping up with the Joneses and the behavioral science behind our spending habits. So that'll be an interesting topic. Talk about some of the reasons why we spend the way we do, and kind of a little bit behind that saying, don't try to keep up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
And then also some news that came out recently. Whole Foods said that, Amazon said that they were going to get Whole Foods to lower their prices, or the company that they now own, by, in some cases, up to 43%, which was, I guess, like a big deal. Were you guys talking about that in the financial management world?
Not real. I mean, so I've been, my TV in the office stays on the news, and everything has been about the flood pretty much.
Right.
So I saw the news about Whole Foods, but it wasn't that much coverage.
Right.
And Amazon stock didn't do anything,
as
ridiculous. A result. But I do want to go this weekend and just investigate this whole thing myself and see if, grapes are no longer $5.99 a pound.
Checking price tags.
Granted, 43% off of $5.99 a pound is still not in my price range, but maybe
grapes,
they'll have something in like a gotta go bin,
right,
that will be like, something I can afford out of Whole Foods. I only buy guacamole at Whole Foods. I don't know why I ever like
the only thing I really ever get from Whole Foods in the once or 2 years, 2 times in a year that I go to the hot food bar.
Okay.
And so hopefully that price might have dipped just a little bit, because the hot food bar is the only place
that's where they make their money.
Well, then I'm the one funding, all of their stuff. But real quick, before we move on to the conversation at hand, headlines, as we always do here on Manage Your Damn Money. Interesting event that happened this past weekend. Mm-hmm. Everyone was talking about it. You're clear on what happened. Everyone's clear on what happened. The Floyd Money Mayweather versus Conor, what's his middle name?
I don't know.
I don't know if he has one. Conor McGregor.
Kangaroo.
Boxing match that happened over the weekend on Saturday. It was a pay-per-view event. And really quickly, I actually watched the fight at a fight party.
Right.
And then somehow was energized by like the actual fight and ended up staying up all night watching like post-fight wrap-up.
Seriously?
Commentary.
This was that exciting for you?
I was up till like 3 a.m., past 3 a.m., watching the like press conference, watching Stephen A. Smith, who actually inspired me.
Stephen A. looked so tired, man. That night, he looked so done.
Well, I mean, it was Vegas. It's late. It was after, midnight. But like I said before, inspired by the post-fight commentary of Stephen A. Smith, it was brought to my attention again that Floyd Money Mayweather must be applauded for more than his boxing skills and 50-0 record. Mayweather apparently was aware of the fact that the pay-per-view servers in Las Vegas and California crashed ahead of his fight with Conor McGregor,
right?
Suggesting that the man is really on top of his business. So one of the details that was thrown in after the fact is that the fight servers for two different places crashed because it was Showtime. Yeah. So too many people were trying to buy the fight at once, and it shut it down
for like 30 minutes. It delayed.
It was 30 minutes.
It was almost 30 minutes. It delayed the fight.
I didn't realize it at the fight party, so it was supposed to be like more like 11:30 than 12.
Yeah, because the undercards wrapped up a little early.
Okay.
So they should have actually been moving on to the main event sooner.
Right.
But the HD version of the servers crashed, so only the standard def was available.
Because who's buying SD these days?
Right.
That's hilarious. I didn't know that. So like I found that out, and apparently that news got back to Floyd, and I imagine he at least had a partial say in saying, hey, we're not going out yet until that's rectified.
Sure, it was his party.
It's his party, which people don't always. I think people think like they're watching the BMA or the National Association of Boxing or something like that, and that's not what this is, which we'll get into a little bit in a moment. So we wanted to take a really quick look, a deeper look into how some of his business dealings have gone, Floyd Mayweather in particular. But we pulled a August 2017 Business Insider story reviewing Mayweather's career and biggest business moves. A couple of things to note, Malcolm. In 2006, and I think this was probably the start of his like doing things the way that he does, he paid $750,000 to void his contract with Bob Arum's top-ranked promotions company, opting to conduct his own negotiations. Less than a year later, he shattered expectations by taking home $25 million from his fight with Oscar De La Hoya. So that was the first time in 2006, like 11 years ago now, that Floyd Mayweather actually decided to negotiate his own deal, essentially.
Right.
By 2010, Mayweather had won 41 professional fights and was among the most prominent athletes on the planet. Thanks to his fights with Marquez and Shane Mosley, he made $65 million in the span of a year. And the story also reports that he's invested in things like real estate, clothing lines, and also marijuana dispensaries. And is said to have pocketed as much as $400 million from this particular fight with Conor McGregor this past weekend.
So for 2 seconds, I don't want to take anything away from Mayweather because obviously he really has done a very good job of like taking care of his own.
Absolutely.
But for a second, I just want to focus on the fact that Conor McGregor talked his way into $100 million payday.
Man.
So yes, he did lose. Yes, we did watch him get beat up and all, but this guy was homeless 4 years ago.
Wow.
And then within 4 years ago to now, he's been fighting as an MMA artist.
Right.
And his girlfriend has been supporting him this entire time.
Wow.
So the way this fight came about is him starting beef with Floyd Mayweather on Twitter and Instagram and everything else for a course of like a year. And forcing Mayweather to engage him in conversation.
Right.
Telling everybody he knows that he could beat Mayweather if he was given the opportunity to. Mayweather finally, I don't know if folks in his camp pushed on him that this was the opportunity to make some real money or whatever it was. This dude came out of retirement to whoop Conor McGregor because Conor McGregor was talking so much trash on social media that he just felt like I have to do this to get this dude to leave me alone.
Right.
Conor McGregor paid himself $100 million to get beat down.
Through trash talking.
Dude, like I'm about to go start Twitter beefs with like 50 people tonight just to see how much money I can make out of it. Like that was rich. So anyway, not to take anything away from Floyd Mayweather, but I would say kudos to McGregor for going from homeless to 9-figure athlete
overnight, quite literally.
But anyway.
And I think as a footnote, obviously, most people know this by now, Conor McGregor kind of skipped his way to the front of the line.
Yes.
In terms of fighting Floyd.
Got a title fight.
Got a title fight that was referred to in the opening as a special event. It wasn't even a title fight or anything. It was just a special event. But and then we went on to look at another story. This was actually a little bit longer ago, from a 2014 Bleacher Report story by Tim Smith. It says that Mayweather collects money on the tickets, beer, soda, hot dogs, and ads being shown around the arena. The first and most important element of every Mayweather fight is the opponent. Mayweather apparently makes the selections with his advisor, Al Heyman, and also Mayweather Promotion CEO, Leonard Ellerby. And then Mayweather also has a hand in choosing the undercard fight. So this is an interesting element that I don't think people realize.
He gets paid off those undercards too.
Absolutely. When you, again, as a sports person, you're used to watching the NBA and knowing that there's this greater association that's planning and hosting and dealing with these events. That's the NFL. That's the Major League Baseball. But boxing is uniquely different in that there is no association managing the situation. This was quite literally an event in the same way that people throw events like at a club.
Right. Well, the association used to be called Don King Management. and Mayweather followed the Don King model. Absolutely. And said, I'm going to be the show and the business. Absolutely. To quote the late, great James Brown.
Absolutely. So another piece of detail in terms of the business side from some of the stuff Mayweather's done, he takes 50% of all pay-per-view revenue on top of what he is guaranteed for each match. So that means Mayweather literally got a piece of what people paid to watch the
Not
fight.
A piece, a half. A half.
Which is insane. Like, and this was like, I think they were saying like almost 1 million people purchased the fight. Or I don't remember what the number
I think it was above that.
It was above
So they took the number. So initially they had the number of folks who had like prepaid for it.
Okay.
But then they realized that folks were waiting until the end of the first round to see if the fight was actually going to go anywhere.
Oh, wow.
Before buying it.
Okay.
So they had far more people jump in after the first round than they thought they would. And it went well above 1 million that actually paid for and tuned into the fight.
Okay. Excellent. That is crazy. So people, and I think people, it's lost on people that he's actually throwing himself a party,
right?
Wherein he, like you said, the fighter, and everything from the tickets that you buy to go to the arena that the fight's being held in, to the hot dog that you bought,
the weight they're gonna fight at, the size of the gloves they get to use,
absolutely.
All that.
I don't know if you noticed it. The ring, what is it? The ring ropes said Mayweather Promotions on them. Now, Conor had the post, I think. It said something Conor on the post. But I was looking around like, this is nothing but a show. Like, this is performance art.
Which is why I told you, boxing to me is no longer what boxing used to be.
Okay.
And maybe for the
wasn't
better.
It always like that?
It was and it wasn't. In the like, Mike Tyson didn't own jack. Mike Tyson didn't own anything except the poncho that he wore to the ring.
Because didn't nobody want that back,
right? And I'm not convinced he didn't just cut a hole in a towel, say this will do, and then walk out there and beat dudes down. Right. Like, so when you think about like where boxing used to be, it's kind of like the rap game in the sense that like Jay-Z owns Tidal and Jay-Z's the featured artist on Tidal, right?
It's exactly
like it's kind of the same model in that way. That like I'm going to build the platform, I'm going to perform on the platform, and then I'm going to invite my best friends over to perform on the platform too, and we'll share in how much we make off of that.
Right.
That is essentially what Mayweather has done to the sport of boxing.
Right.
But at the same time, I'm just not a huge boxing fan like I used to be growing up.
Okay.
Because the fights are kind of staged events, like I'm watching WWF.
I mean, it was serious. Like this, the level of like build up for this was equivalent to what I remember when one of the times at WrestleMania, The Rock was going to wrestle Triple H.
Exactly.
It was exactly that same level of build up, trash talk, and anxiety building and Conor's good at it.
You could see in McGregor's eyes, he knew that Stone Cold Stunner was coming in the 10th round, and he acted accordingly.
Absolutely.
But so something that I noticed a while ago, probably like 2 years ago, when I really started paying attention to Floyd Mayweather as a businessman, and your boy Stephen A. pointed it out on one of the ESPN shows yesterday. You haven't heard Floyd ever say anything negative about his opponent before he beat him or after he beat him.
That's real.
And I don't mean like the trash talking that goes on before to build up the fight.
Right.
I mean when they ask him like, Floyd, can he fight? Can you beat him? You never hear, he gives McGregor all the props in the world as soon as he comes out the ring.
He did.
Because he has to convince you that this was a spectacle. And you actually got your money's worth, and that dude was actually on his level.
Right.
Like, think about the last 5 or 6 fights you've seen from Floyd Mayweather.
Right.
All he does is get in there, dipsy-do, look like he's playing around with his sparring partner. But when he gets out of the ring, he says, man, that dude was a bad boy. He was throwing all kind of punches at me. Did you see that? Like, he builds it up even after he's fought.
After the fact.
So that he can sell the next one.
Absolutely.
That is genius.
It's genius. And he said he's thoroughly retired now.
He's, thoroughly old now.
Yeah, he's 40, so I don't know if you could do that too much more. I asked somebody at the beginning of the fight, I said, should a 29-year-old be fighting a 40-year-old? And at the end, I was like, well, I guess in this case, it was fine.
He looked all of 40, though.
He did, I guess. I guess he did a little bit. But anyway, the business of Mayweather and how he makes his money. Real quick question for you. Is Mayweather not a perfect example of ownership and the way that you're supposed to, and the way that you just described, Sean Carter does it, owning your craft and then exploiting your craft to the maximum?
Yes, but it's very tough to do when you're an individual. I mean, it's easy to do when you're an individual in comparison to team sports.
That's true.
So if you look at like Ice Cube in this Big 3 basketball league that he's trying to get off the ground,
yes,
it is far tougher to own a league like that, get it started from scratch. You remember the XFL?
I do remember that.
Think about Vince McMahon was $100 millionaire.
He had a lot of money.
Couldn't get a football league out the ground.
Right.
You know what I mean? So if you just look at individuals versus team sports, Serena Williams might be able to get people to pay admission fee to come watch her smack Sharapova for the 30th time. I would pay for that. But
right.
Serena said, I'm taking my talents to the Serena Williams Entertainment Network.
Right.
And I'm going to charge $50 admission fee to come watch me play whoever I decide to play.
Right.
And all the people who play in the matches before me, I'm going to get a cut from whatever they get for winning and whatever. And the Serena Williams Open would be 20 years.
Right.
Like, I would actually pay to come watch that. But it's an individual sport.
Right.
And that individual is putting up their own money to make that thing happen. So
absolutely.
Much tougher to do if you're like, the Redskins or the Yankees or something like that. Right. You can't go create a baseball league, 9 people and,
Absolutely. One question that we got off, or interesting thought we got off Instagram, would it be possible to, I forgot what my thought was.
Okay.
I forgot what my thought was. But we want to remind people as
about as old as Floyd
catch
now.
Dementia, that you're listening and watching Manage Your Damn Money. We're going to take a quick music break. But when we come back, we're going to cover the conversation at hand, which is keeping up with the Joneses and the behavioral science behind our spending habits. We want to remind you that you can always subscribe to Manage Your Damn Money on Apple Podcasts. Just search Manage Your Damn Money and then hit subscribe. And also leave us a comment or review there. That helps us move up in the ratings. And then you can also find us on SoundCloud, soundcloud.com/Manage Your Damn Money. And also on Facebook, facebook.com/Manage Your Damn Money. And anytime you have a comment, thought, or you want us to cover something, send us an email at info@manageyourdamnmoney.com. This is Manage Your Damn Money with Ben and Malcolm. We will be right back. People. This is Manage Your Damn Money with Ben and Malcolm. We want to welcome you back, those who are listening live and those who are listening on the podcast. We've been talking about Floyd Mayweather's business exploits, and in our getting wrapped up about that fact, we forgot today's a very special day. Malcolm, what's today?
Today is Michael Jackson's birthday. So I don't know how that got lost in the whole everything else.
That should have led with the whole show.
Right. Well, I mean, we traded one great for another, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, we still had to get that in there.
Indeed.
Happy birthday, MJ.
Happy birthday, MJ. Inspiration. Even, what trips me out about Michael Jackson in particular, real quick, kids who are not or were not born when Michael Jackson was last alive still know and dance and do Michael Jackson.
That's a good point. They learned it on YouTube.
Yeah, but it's still as transformative for that generation who have a whole lot of things that they could be looking at and watching instead.
You know what trips me out about Michael Jackson?
What's that?
My favorite video of all time.
What's that?
The Remember the Time video.
Uh-huh.
This dude showed up to a pyramid and stole Eddie Murphy's girl. danced her out of the pyramid, off the throne.
Indeed.
Best Michael Jackson video of all time.
There you have it. This is Manager Dan Money with Ben and Malcolm. Today's conversation at hand, keeping up with the Joneses and the behavioral science behind our spending habits. On Manager Dan Money, we know saving and planning your financial future is hard. We all face daily challenges in making the right decisions, and that we do the things that we think would be important to spend. And so we thought we would take some time to figure out why sometimes it's so difficult. One of the most prominent and pernicious struggles of doing right by your money is the urge we all feel to keep up with the Joneses. So that's kind of the pressure that we feel from the outside to do different things. So I have some things that I'll talk about a little bit later. But to kind of kick it off, we thought we'd pull this story. The headline read, "This is why it seems like everyone else has more money than you." This was an August 2017 Nerd Wallet article by Liz Weston, where she said, "It's not just you who wonders how your neighbor can afford a sweet new ride, or how your coworker announces she's taking yet another trip abroad, or how your best friend upgrades to a bigger house in a better part of town. We all want to know how those people in our lives are doing that." And the article explored the idea of our collective, quote unquote, wanting to know how people don't make that much more money than us can afford to spend on such lavish or exotic things. I have an actual experience with this, and it's gonna people when I say it are gonna know that I'm calling them out in particular, but it's not like a bad thing. But one of the things that I've gotten recently, especially since the wife and I have traveled to a couple different places, is y'all just be traveling. Y'all go. I mean, when can I be like y'all? And which
Instagram.
It's Instagram and all that.
That's what you get for posting on Instagram.
Which is cool, right? There's definitely that element. But even behind that, or at least maybe it's just because who I am, I read behind that comment, y'all can afford to go overseas like that? What y'all doing? So,
I mean, you always have to consider though, who the people are who are saying this to you.
No, these are people these are folks who we hang with.
Well, hang on a second. So everything is relative is where I was going with that.
Okay.
So I'm not jealous of anybody who goes on a 1 week trip because I can go on a 1 week trip.
Right.
I'm jealous of your grandma who goes on 4-month cruises like it's nothing. So it's relative. I want to be cruising for 4 months too.
Right, absolutely. And the story went on to say the new car, that house, and the exotic trip are the shiny end results of a series of decisions hidden below the surface. What we don't see typically are the trade-offs or the consequences. And that's kind of to my point about us traveling and doing different things like that. There are other sacrifices we make. I haven't had a car since before Uber was a thing.
Right.
And so that's a sacrifice that people don't really realize. Now, granted, now my wife and I, we share a car. But time before we got married and we're living together, I was on the bus. I was, on the metro.
You don't buy Tide.
I don't buy Tide. Detergent, exactly. So these things add up. And there's some other things that we've done, in our own lives to save to be able to do the traveling thing. But it's just an interesting thing that, people kind of see on the front end what's happening.
And there are always trade-offs.
Always, because you can't have it all, essentially,
right,
unless you are a millionaire, or at least in our case, 100,000-aire.
I've heard the saying, you can do anything you want, you just can't do everything you want.
Absolutely.
So that it kind of is the same thing. If you're to your point, if you're driving a car that's costing you $500, $400 a month to pay for and maintain,
absolutely,
well, then there's your
trip
money. You know what I mean? That whole thing is done right there. That's $5,000 every year that you save on car expenses that you could use to go on that trip.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then economists and psychologists in the piece say we care about our status, especially relative to our peers, which Malcolm kind of alluded to. And what we consume can be a way of keeping track. So some people buy cars, some people go on trips. A quote in the story: a lot of our decisions are based primarily on this comparison effect. Measuring ourselves against others can spur some people to economic success, said behavioral economist Fernando Zapatero of the University of Southern California's Marshall School of Business in Los Angeles. That competitive, how do I do better impulse drives some people to work harder and invest more and persevere through difficulties. But it can also lead people to waste money on things that aren't really important and miss out on things that are important, as some financial planners in the piece said. So it's an interesting thing that, like, obviously going to, living our lives, and then also, as you mentioned before, with Instagram being what it is, with Facebook being what it is, it's really difficult to not feel the pressure that you should be doing X, Y, or Z financially, I guess.
Right.
Especially when you see people spending on this or that. I wonder, in your world, Malcolm, do you ever have clients come to you as a financial planner and say, well, my buddy was telling me about his boat that he was getting ready to buy? Do people come to you and say,
some. I don't usually hear about a boat, like,
okay.
Or if they have a boat, it's not because somebody else does.
Okay.
But I do get some of that where I have to talk people off a ledge and save them from themselves, right?
Okay.
Like, so for example, I used to have a client who was determined to take money out of his 401k to buy a BMW.
Just for the BMW.
Car didn't break down. Didn't need, a BMW specifically because of the German engineering, early 50s.
Okay.
It was just that I've always wanted a BMW and I gotta have a BMW.
Right.
I think it kind of had a little something to do too with everybody in my neighborhood on my street, where I live, and this, McMansion has a BMW, so I have to have a BMW to match that.
Right.
And so he was, determined, and actually did take a loan out of his 401k.
Oh wow.
To buy a BMW, and I'm not talking about a 2000 BMW that cost $10,000 with.
He got a fresh big body.
He got a fresh big body. Just created the new 6 Series sedan, like brand new, 80 grand.
The BMW boats,
which pretty much guarantees you're gonna work forever. And so at that point, it's like, who's more important, like everybody else or you?
Right.
Because you didn't buy that car for you.
You bought that
car for everybody else.
Right.
So that's kind of important to keep in mind. And I think that's a lot of times where people get distracted financially, is it's not necessarily the small little ticky-tack stuff that you'll do, like buying Starbucks instead of making coffee at home. Yes, those add up over a long span of time.
Right.
But those aren't going to bankrupt you.
Right.
Taking 80 grand out of your 401k plan is going to bankrupt you. Like,
Right.
So that kind of stuff, yeah. It's very easy, I think, to get derailed like that. You have to stay financially disciplined.
Right.
But back to the point real quick that you made a few minutes ago about kind of using everybody else as the benchmark to keep track, and that being the thing that like motivates you to work harder. I think that's probably the smarter way to approach it.
Okay.
Is you look at what everybody else is doing and say, I don't want to be the one to get left behind.
Sure.
So then I'm going to do that much more to make sure that I'm, out in front of the pack.
Right.
And making sure that I'm on top of mine.
Okay.
So yes, I'm spending it on X, but it's because I can afford to spend it on X because I work hard and, earn it.
Right.
That kind of thing. Not I borrowed 120% against, my
against
house.
my retirement.
So,
Right. So it's interesting. So one of the other questions that I have is, just in your life as a financial planner, and also just regular life, socially and otherwise, what luxuries do you find people are willing to sacrifice now? Because like I sacrificed not having a vehicle. That was like a huge portion of my like cutting things out, so to speak.
Right.
What are things people are willing to cut out, and then things that people aren't willing to cut out?
So I'll do the aren't first. I think the things people are not willing to cut out is probably travel.
Okay.
Like folks will spend $2,000-$4,000 on one vacation and have no shame in doing it. and everybody, as everybody's kind of mantra is like, well, you got to take the trips while you're young.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm spending my money on experiences, not things.
Right. Sure.
Like there's even the whole tiny house movement, right?
Absolutely.
Like the commercial that annoys the crap out of me so much is the dude that's like, we care more about our experiences, and so we downsize to a tiny house so that we can have the money to do whatever we want, be free from stuff, and be free from life. Like, get out of here, dude. Like, buy a house with a door.
Malcolm's not buying it.
Not buying it at all. Like, those people annoy the crap. Like, the people that would rather couch surf just to be able to go travel around the world and like get a job and travel 2 years from now. Like, get out of here.
Says this old man. Very good, very good. A couple of suggestions to avoid the feelings of having to keep up with the Joneses really quickly. One good thing is to know your goals concretely. such that you know what you're able and working towards, or able to do and what you're working towards. Are you paying off debt? Are you working towards an early retirement? Are you trying to buy a house? Knowing what your goals are actually obviously filters down into your behaviors. And if you know what your goals are, that helps get you one step closer, rather than if you just don't even know what your goals are, then you're just kind of, flying by the seat of your pants, as they say. And then obviously, as you kind of alluded to, Malcolm, decide on what the essentials are. That's a big one. Because if you don't even know what's most important to you, then, you can't really make good decisions, because nothing's important. So anything can be important. And then also realize you don't always know the backstory of other individuals.
That's the most important part.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have any thoughts on that, Malcolm?
Well, just, you hear, to your point, you hear people make comments all the time like, oh, I wish I could do X.
Right.
Or, oh, I wish I could, you can.
Right.
Get up and grind like the people who are making it happen, and you can do it too.
Absolutely.
But don't just, and then also to your point, I hate to look at the negative side, but I guess we have to. Mm-hmm. Like, you don't know how much debt people are going into
to
just to
things.
Look like they got it. Right? Like, just because that person has a $2,000 purse doesn't mean they don't owe somebody more than $2,000 in credit card bills to buy that purse, just because they want you to feel like they got something that you don't have.
Absolutely.
So now y'all both like the blind leading the blind into, infinite debt. Like,
absolutely.
Stay in your financial lane, as Kevin Hart said.
Absolutely. And on that note, that Kevin Hart note, we want to remind people you're listening and watching Manage Your Damn Money. We're going to take another quick music break and hear from our executive producer and co-creator of this show, Mr. Beats by Beeman. You can find his music on Instagram. Just spell it how it sounds, at Beats by Beeman. We remind you can also follow us, Malcolm, on social media. What's your handle, Malcolm?
At Malcolm on Money.
And of course, mine is at MYDM with a 1 on the end. When we come back, we're going to continue to talk about keeping up with the Joneses and the behavioral science behind our spending habits. This is Manage Your Damn Money with Ben and Malcolm. We will be right back.
Listen. Now listen.
We're back here on Manage Your Damn Money. That was another piece by Mr. Beats by Beeman, the executive producer and co-creator of this show, Manage Your Damn Money. We're talking about today's conversation at hand, keeping up with the Joneses and the behavioral science behind our spending habits, Malcolm. And so we thought we'd take another look at a different story that we pulled. The headline read, "This is why millennials can't have nice things or save any money." And at first I thought this was going to be another millennial bashing piece, but it actually wasn't. An August 2017 Market Watch piece by Quentin Fotrell explores the fact that millennials spend $2,300 more a year on several key items. Those items include, according to a recent study by Bankrate.com, the millennials spend $233 per month on meals versus $182 per month for older generations. And
is that not a little bit to you?
It seems like under what I would think, but if you consider averages across the country, like that makes sense.
Is this because so many people have watched What the Health, and so now everybody's eating kale?
I actually refuse to watch that. But anyway, that's like a Netflix documentary. But millennials spend $233 per month on meals. Older people apparently spend only $182 per month on meals, and then millennials also spend $161 on cell phone charges versus $135 for older people. I saw like an old woman with a flip phone in the mall the other day.
That was probably my mom.
Did your mom speak Spanish?
No.
Okay, well, it wasn't your mom. But they spend But millennials also spend $1,100 less per year on travel and TV when compared to like older generations. And then for TV services like cable, satellite, and streaming subscription services, millennials spend just $80 per month on average compared to $114 for those 37 and up. So that's kind of like that cord cutting generation versus and you're like a cord cutter, right? You don't have like cable and anything like that.
Proudly. I haven't had cable in over a year. Sticking it to the man.
Sacrifices being made. The average millennial dines at a restaurant or buys takeout food 5 times per week, and nearly 30% of this age group says they buy coffee at least 3 times per week. I know my life fits into that range. Like I can say
The coffee?
The coffee and the food, like the frequency of buying food out, regardless if it's like McDonald's.
Well, that's what at $233 a month on food. I don't know if that's like at the grocery store or if that's on like grocery store plus dining out.
It clearly can't be the grocery. I assumed it was like
Okay.
eating out. But then more than half of millennials, 54%, eat out at least 3 times per week, compared to roughly 1/3 of Gen Xers and baby boomers. Like how often do you eat out, Malcolm, in a week?
I'm almost embarrassed to say.
Oh
Like,
my gosh.
are
we gonna find some frivolity in Malcolm's budget right
It's
now?
not even. I'm not out here frivolousing it up just because that's a word, by the way. Check it. Not just because well, yes, I am. I'm lying. I just don't feel like cooking. Like I'm that person you see at the grocery store who buys all the ingredients to make one meal and then runs to the checkout. Like I don't go grocery shopping.
Okay.
So I go to work super early. I get home from work super late half the time.
Right.
The only thing open is whatever's on my way. Everything else I have tunnel vision.
Right.
So, if I go to the grocery store, it's to buy like spaghetti noodles, sauce, and
some meat.
like cheese and some meat. And don't talk to me about anything else.
That's funny.
So yes, I am definitely in that group that's eating out.
Okay. And then also the story went on to say that some 59% of all age groups say they don't purchase any brewed coffee or tea in a typical week, and 40% say they buy takeout or dine in a restaurant no more than once per week. So definitely more on the side of like, at least in the whole, buying and eating out.
I've kind of found I can't let that go. Like I find that interesting.
What's
like
that?
if you look at, I don't know how you grew up, but I think about myself. If you look at like how often you ate out as a family when you were a kid, it was like a big thing to just go to like IHOP, or Sizzler or whatever like the restaurants were back then.
Right.
As
the chains,
a kid, as a family, whatever.
Right.
Now, like I just told you, I probably eat out 3-4 days a week for dinner or lunch, somewhere in between there. Like that is probably absurd to people, in the generations before us who were like, you go out for special occasions. You don't eat outside of your house just because it's raining.
And a lot of that has to do with culture. A couple things. The Food Network.
Okay.
So meaning,
blame it on Bobby Flay.
how do you say gourmet fast food? Chipotle,
fast casual.
That's the phrase I was looking for. So that's like a cultural thing that permeates. So it's easier to do that and go to Chipotle.
Rest in peace, Chipotle.
Or then to like cook a meal. So that's definitely having an impact. Where those things weren't available back in the day.
That's
like
very
you
true.
had to go sit your butt down at Denny's and
Or
be
you
there
were
for
eating
it.
McDonald's.
Right.
You had one or the
It
other.
was one or the other. There was nothing in between. And then also, obviously, we talk about this all the time on Manage Your Damn Money. Millennials shoulder more student loan debt than any other generation and face housing prices that are far higher than their parents did at their age, and in a post-recession environment where there are stagnant wages. Student loan debt, obviously, as we've mentioned before on the show, has reached collectively $1.4 trillion, and the cost of college is continuing to soar. And then spending no more than 30% of income on rent or mortgage, which was deemed a golden rule for decades, is now almost impossible for many young Americans, especially those like us living in cities like DC, New York, and other places like where you can't get away with spending less than
even the tiny
30%.
house people aren't spending 30% on their housing costs.
Absolutely. And then another Bankrate survey found that millennials have the highest propensity to have enough to cover 3 to 5 months of expenses, so 31%, whereas Generation X is most likely to have some savings but not enough to cover more than 3 months expenses. So some of the lessons that we've learned from the Great Recession are actually seem to be bearing out in these stats, that like we're better savers and we're better prepared for the future. And then also people younger than 35 and those with higher household incomes are among the above average users of digital ordering with apps like Seamless and Grubhub. Restaurant meals were reported as a huge component of eating into budgets of Americans at at large. Other data shows up to 24% of budget spent on restaurants and non-grocery store food. So that's it right there, I think, in my opinion. That's the reason why it is difficult and challenging to, especially when it comes to food.
Right.
Because everything's just like at your fingertips. So, and that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about was apps. Do you use food ordering apps or food
Not
delivery
really.
apps?
Food isn't so much my Achilles heel
Okay.
as it is that, I hear it is for a lot of people.
It absolutely is mine.
But like, so what I noticed and I realized a while ago is that I can't use some of these features on these apps that make it way too easy for you to spend money.
Man.
Like Amazon and the one-click ordering.
That's a
I
death trap.
I delinked everything. I needed to ask me 3 or 4 times,
Right.
are you sure before you place this purchase,
Right.
to give me a chance to go,
Right.
what am I going to do with another stainless steel straw for this Yeti mug that I bought? That, like, yes, you're looking at it and you're like, it's only $9 for 4.
Right.
But then, like, what am I
You don't
going to do
need
with
it.
them? Right. So I'd rather have my $9. But if it only asks me once, put your thumbprint on your cell phone to confirm that you
buy.
want this, and it'll be at your house in 2 days.
Right.
It's way too easy for me to make that happen. So
Right.
I don't actually link my
You don't link
credit
stuff up.
cards and stuff up to it just to add that additional layer of difficulty. And then I usually end up saying, you know what, forget it. Like, I don't have time for this.
And that's actually to the point. Some of the challenges of spending versus saving in the millennial and then also Generation Z era, and Generation Z is the generation behind millennials. Technology and apps, obviously, like we mentioned, offer you food options at your fingertips. And then, like, as you mentioned, not wanting to have your payment methods linked up because that makes it too easy. I have this one really bad issue. My favorite clothing retailer.
Okay.
I have the app on my phone, and it allows you to scroll and actually like to save things. So you hit the heart if you like it, and it puts it in a little bin, and it just like holds it there for you.
Right.
And so I have a running tab of garments that I like and that I could possibly purchase, and I know that if I delete the app, I won't do half or even 1/3 of the damage that I've done as a result of having that app on my phone.
But you still haven't deleted the app.
I still haven't deleted it because it is a wonderful pastime of mine. But I do.
That's actually really smart, though, on their part, to make it just like scrolling
It's just like
your
social
news
media.
feed on Facebook or something.
It's exactly the same. The thing I will say that I do as a habit, and where the saving and liking garments works for me, is I never immediately buy things. I always wait, because one of two things will happen. Either they will run out of it, which this particular retailer does on a regular basis, and that will be my sign that I did not need the thing.
Okay.
And so I will continuously come back at least 3 or 4 times until it's still there. And then I'll say, okay, do I really want this? Do I want to pay for it? And make those other layers of like decision making. And then I go through the process of buying it. This end result, I guess, in some cases is still the same, but there's been many things that I didn't buy because I waited and kind of delayed my own immediate gratification and just said, no, let me wait, and then came back to it, and then my size was gone, so I can't get it anymore. And then also, obviously, student loan debt is a huge component of millennials not being able to save. And then obviously, which we've talked about before on previous episodes of Manager Jam Money, home buying and the renting quagmire. We know that now, like, buying a home is a lot more expensive than it used to be. But also renting, especially in bigger cities, is getting to be really expensive too.
Well, dude, DC rent. But it's not as, I think I'm realizing it's not as attractive to buy a house as it used to be.
Okay.
And so part of what we're talking about, where you would rather spend money eating out, going to Starbucks, shopping at whatever clothing store,
Right.
whatever else, you'd rather spend that money on that
Right.
and just rent
Right.
rather than buy a house, because owning a house isn't as attractive to us as it was
Sure.
to the generations before us. Like, I remember my mom telling me, like, the only reason she bought her first condo was because her landlord kept raising her rent at some astronomical rate that
Okay.
like pissed her off to the point she said, forget it, I'm just gonna move to a place where my housing cost is fixed.
Right.
Well, that hasn't happened
Right. Not
to
yet.
me.
Right.
Like, costs are regulated to some degree
Sure.
by, county government, district government, that kind of stuff. So those things don't happen as much now. But then separately from that, like, that's not enough me having to move to get away from increasing rent costs,
Right.
that's still not enough to convince me I have to go buy a house like
Right.
tomorrow morning.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I think it just becomes less and less attractive when you have all of those other detractors that you're naming that make
Absolutely.
it tougher for you to go buy a house. Like
Right.
unless the banks make it easier for you to go buy a house, it's kind of like, you know,
Well,
I can keep renting if that means that I can also continue to eat out and whatever else.
Right, which we always talk about. Millennials are more concerned with the experience. You're listening and watching Manage Your Damn Money. Today's conversation at hand, keeping up with the Joneses and the behavioral science behind our spending habits. We're going to take another quick music break and hear another track from Mr. Beats by Beeman. We just want to remind you that you can always subscribe to Manage Your Damn Money on Apple Podcasts. Just hit the subscribe button and leave us a review. Let us know how good of a job we're doing. Those help us go up in the ratings. And also remember, you can find us on soundcloud.com/Manage Your Damn Money. And you can always find us on our website and find everything you need to know there, manageyourdamnmoney.com. And send us inquiries, questions, topics you want us to cover at info@manageyourdamnmoney.com. This is Manage Your Damn Money with Ben and Malcolm. We're going to take a quick music break. We will be right back. Welcome back to Manage Your Damn Money with Ben and Malcolm. Today's conversation at hand, what we've been discussing, keeping up with the Joneses and the behavioral science behind our spending habits. Malcolm just asked the question, who are the Joneses anyway?
Like you just gotta wonder, right? Like they gotta be the flyest people in history if everybody and their mom is trying to keep up with the Joneses.
Absolutely.
Or it's just, you know, where the saying came from itself.
Uh-huh.
I'm curious, like who was the Jones family?
Who coined?
that those people in the neighborhood were like, you out here trying to be like the Joneses.
Did you see the new pool the Joneses
Look at them
got?
with their electricity. Trying to be like the Joneses.
Right, absolutely. So we were talking about a little bit of the things that get in the way of doing what you're supposed to do financially speaking. A broad question that we kind of get into, will technology in the way that you outline continue to give us the greater ability to spend and spend more easily in a way that's kind of, you have to use great restraint to avoid doing it?
If Jeff Bezos has his way, yes. Like, I mean, they're doing everything they can to figure out ways to get into your head without having to do a lobotomy. Like anything short of that, they're doing it. Like
Right.
That's the reason you always hear me like complain and be so leery about giving away my data from my cell phone and my browser history and everything else. Because literally you can take that information and craft my wildest dreams and now have it scroll down my Facebook feed every single time I log in, and it's perfectly tailored just for me. Like that is extremely dangerous for me and my personal budget.
You know what also trips me out? Because two things. Speaking of Jeff Bezos and Amazon, I recently bought a product, the app, what is it, the TV, the Amazon TV, and it has the Alexa component where you can talk to it and tell it what app to launch or what thing you want to watch. And I was like, I'm unplugging this.
And then it tells Jeff Bezos,
because I don't want Amazon listening to what I'm doing in the house just by myself. So I typically unplug that thing when I'm not using it. And then I saw that Amazon's running commercials now where for $50 they put like an Alexa type thing you can buy for your house, which is really a play for Alexa, I need more toilet paper. And then toilet paper arrives at your house.
They know what you like and they know where to find you, and they ship it right on out from their warehouse in Baltimore somewhere. Or their drone from space drops it on your front yard.
So is this like a bad thing for people trying to do better with their money? That
Yes.
we have all these.
It's Ted. Like when you think about like all of the stuff that your parents had to worry about in managing their finances.
That's true.
They didn't have to worry about Alexa.
It was a checkbook,
Right.
and that was about it.
If you balanced your checkbook right, you knew how many dollars you had left and
Right.
so on, you know, and that kind of stuff.
Roughly.
But everything was kind of, you know, finite.
Right.
Now, like, everything is, you can accidentally buy stuff. And like, it's probably hard to believe that the person accidentally bought it, right?
Right.
Like, your wife could be like, "Oh, I accidentally bought those shoes," and you're like, "Yeah, all right, whatever."
Right.
But she really could accidentally buy some shoes,
Right.
And then like they show up 3 days later, and it's like, "What is this? Like,
Right.
how they know my size? Like, what color?" Because you were just clicking around on Amazon, and it was like, "Oh yeah."
Right. Is this app that I wanted to mention that's popular in China that I was speaking to some people from China, and they said you can pay for things in China with this particular app.
Wait.
That's which is a social media. Excuse me, it's a social media platform.
Okay.
So it's a social media. It's like us saying we could pay for things with Facebook.
Well, we can pay for things with Facebook.
Can you?
Yeah, Facebook has a marketplace.
Well, not like that. Like using the app on your phone of the social media platform as like a card or a credit card.
Oh well,
In that
Facebook
way.
Pay is around the corner.
Right, exactly. So these things, which are all crazy, and they're like create distractions and diversions for what you need to be doing with your money. So that's definitely gonna
Everybody's tapped into your wallet.
man.
Like everybody. Yeah, it's dangerous, and like I said, that's why I make it as difficult as I possibly can,
Right.
to spend the money, because as soon as you just
So is there any solutions, basic solutions, really quickly, that we can go through to kind of curb the effect? Obviously, the Joneses have one part to do with it, but also technology and the use of technology has something to do with it as well.
use the budgeting apps.
Okay.
You take advantage of like the mints and the acorns and
Right.
the digits and everything else
Right.
that actually make you like face the music in
Right.
black and white writing.
Right.
Here's how much you make. Here's how much you spend. Like my banking app actually says at the very bottom of how much my balance is,
Mm-hmm.
you spend $5 more than what you actually make every month.
Oh,
or
wow.
you spend $500 less than what you make every month on average. Congratulations, or whatever it is.
Right.
It actually makes you like face the music.
Right.
And then I noticed all of a sudden one day it has the option to turn that off. And I said the only reason you would want to turn that off is because
Right.
it's kind of like stepping on the scale after eating Thanksgiving dinner.
Sure.
Like you already know it's going to be bad. You're just going to do everything you can to block it out until
Absolutely.
you know you've gotten back in the gym and you got right. It's kind of the same thing, but if you hold yourself accountable and use those kind of apps that are available to us to make sure that what you're spending is still within the parameters of what you should be doing, then that kind of helps alleviate some of it. But then also, if you automate and systematize your saving and investing,
Right.
then you don't have to worry about spending what you should be saving,
Right.
if that makes sense. So if you have, $100, $200, $500 a month or whatever going into a savings account, and you're maxing out the match in your 401k plan, and you're actually contributing to an investment account or whatever else,
Right.
if you're doing those things automatically every month, and there's still enough money in your regular checking account for you to go act a fool,
Then you're doing okay.
then you don't have to be as nervous and as worried, because at least you've taken care of the things you should have been.
Absolutely. So in a way, we're talking about technology and the way that technology pushes us to spend, but we're also saying technology can help you save and do things automatically
If used correctly.
if used correctly. That's excellent input there, Malcolm. We want to remind folks that you've been listening to Manage Your Damn Money with Ben and Malcolm. What else is going on? I think that we're pretty much at the end
I'm
of this
looking at
one.
all these Facebook views, man, and I almost turned into Donald Trump for a second. I was like, "Did you see this crowd? like,
It's the biggest crowd ever.
this is the biggest crowd Facebook has ever seen." We're probably up to like 800 views or something in the live feed now. I'm not going to refresh while we're like trying to close out the show, but like I'm excited.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we want to remind folks that you can always listen to past episodes of Manage Your Damn Money. Just go to Apple Podcast or SoundCloud and search Manage Your Damn Money. Send us a note if you have music also as well that you want to have played during our music breaks on the show. You can send those clips to us at info@manageyourdamnmoney.com. And if it's good, we might play it as a music break. Maybe if it's good. We want to remind you can always find out what's going on with us on social media, facebook.com/Manage Your Damn Money, and also us on social media. Malcolm, what's your handle?
At Malcolm on Money.
And of course, mine is at MYDM1. Until the next episode of Manage Your Damn Money, be good with your money.
Peace.
Peace.